The Skorian, the Greyleer, is the third full-length album from Mefitis. This is a Northern California-based death metal band, and we really do have to qualify that with quite a few things. I guess they consider it dark metal. It's the way they've described it, and I would say it's rooted in the fundamentals of old school death metal that fully expanded and matured in the around the mid 90s by way of early forms of technical death metal as well as melodic black death metal. Now, that's in terms of technique. In terms of what the way that they present themselves and the way their sound has developed over the years, that is something that is particularly idiosyncratic. And as evidenced by the title of this album, there's a little bit of a dimensional crossing here. There's a skin being shed. There's an illusion being cut away through this process of becoming that happens on this album. And it's split between two recording sessions and two distinct sides that illustrate where this band was coming from when they started recording this album, and then where they went with it when they took a few more risks, and more, sort of in the second half, but there's so much heavy foreshadowing for what this record is on the previous record, as well as the step from the first half into the second half. You'll sort of see the some of the gothic rock and post-punk influenced elements and some of the avant-garde nature of the band shining through in their own way as it progresses. So this is naturally a band that had shown up from a technical point of view. This is a group. These are extremely proficient musicians who have a strong sense of composition, of theme, and of the way that they might bring together the sophistication that came out of the original death metal movement, and how to bring that forward into something that includes the advancements provided by black metal and just all types of music in general since then. So it's not necessarily a throwback old school type thing, but the bones of the music and their muscle memory for it are extremely intense. And you'll find some of the technical death metal of their sound explored much more on Fabricant, which was almost a like kind of a concurrent event that was more focused on the sort of a Demolic style routing. And this, I would say, is more classified alongside maybe the first and second At the Gates albums, Demigod, and Sentenced, where there really was a passage from pure death metal and thrash derived styles of death metal, where the intricacy of their compositions became so intense that they kind of spiraled out into various modes of gothic rock and whatnot. So I wouldn't say they're following the leader in that sense, but the roots of what they do show on their first two records. So it's a difficult thing to convey and even to perceive if you haven't spent a ton of time with Ember Dawn and Offscourings. I think Offscourings is the point of illumination. It's the extreme that they reached in terms of their melodic voice, in terms of the intricacy of their compositions. It is just almost inhuman the way that record is put together. And there's no surprise that I've given all three of their records so far the highest possible score, because there is so much to glean from the work they put into them, and they've been at work on these songs with some intensity. It's all very impressive that it has all come together in such a way. This record is the product of a lot of those skills coming together and foaming up into a point of greatness, of mastery. And I do think this is one of those things where so much music releases every month and every week even, that it would be easy to just flow through this record and feel it when there's so much more to appreciate about the work they put into it. So I don't know if a 15-second clip will definitely exactly convey the duality of this record perfectly, but we'll get a taste of what it sounds like here for 1 second. So the bones and the elemental fusion of Mefitis' sound is here in terms of its high fantasy narrative, its creative use of language, in terms of its actual compositions, which I describe as Svensson-esque in terms of the dual guitar compositions. But here, everything is more, for the sake of any other useful term, they're more musical. They put together songs that stick. They've got a little bit more of a vocal range to work with here in terms of clean vocals. There's some gothic post-punk theater in the way that they bring it all together, and overall they're writing songs that are just they're just as active and technical and kinetic in their movement, but this is something a little bit different as it displays over the course of the full listen. It's a continuation of their voice. It's a sophistication, but also it's a pullback on the actual note count, and it won't necessarily be so mind blurring in the sense that it'll be too much to keep up with. Now, if you're looking to go in and approach this album note for note, you can do that, and it is impressive in that sense. But I would suggest that maybe just vibing with this record is actually the best way to enjoy it, because they're doing all the work for you in producing the something with a little bit more of a level of feeling and expression throughout. The fact that they've recorded this, I believe, mostly in an analog medium. I don't think that they've used full digital gear to record this, and you can feel the studio space. You can feel the readiness of their technique and all of the hits here. It really does feel like that was all worth the time and effort to capture something real, because this record goes pretty far with just taking a step outside of what they were doing before, much further away from the roboticism of the previous record. It feels like it's in a different class altogether. There's maybe a balance to achieve there in the sense that they're not necessarily thinking about a broader audience, but rather their tastes are now showing a bit more. Again, this is a type of group where one song has an album's worth of thought put into it, and so by just easing up a little bit on those strictures, they've made something that is already kind of fuming with a different type of energy, and I think something that's worth working on more. And for me, again, I think these guys have just kind of hit it out of the park again. For me, this is one of the highest recommendations I have to give this year in general. I think this is one of the better bands to come out of the United States underground in the last 10 years. And I think that all three of their records are worth pining over every detail of, because they are that good. Absolute talents. Check that out for yourself. It released on November 29th, and read my review for a lot more detail on kind of the moment-to-moment action of the record and my feelings about the whole thing.